tree with no worries and chant. That's where I'm going. And then I'm going back to the spiritual world. But all this other stuff I'm doing, why? It's just to benefit other people. Because I want to see my friends happy. I want to see them as happy as I am. I want to see them as strong and independent and self-realized as I got the blessing to be on good fortune. So today we're going to talk about Jyotish. Jyotish means Vedic astrology. Make sure I'm not going to trip over the wires here. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jyotish. Vedic astrology. The word Jyotish, Jo means emanate. Jyoti means light. So from the Vedic Sanskrit root Jyo, Jyoti means to emanate light, to shine, to glow. And Isha means the first. And this is one of the names of God. Because God is like the first being, the first living entity. So the light of God, or the emanation of God, the glow, the energetic products of God. Jyotisha. The science of Jyotisha, oops, that's really hard to see, isn't it? Let's try closing this. That's better. Okay. The science of Jyotisha means actually understanding God's emanations, God's energy. Understanding how He's creating everything and what that means. So what we're doing in Jyotisha is we are analyzing God's energy to understand its relationship with Him. That's the whole point. And Jyotisha is called a Vedanga. Vedanga. Veda means knowledge or truth, especially spiritual truth. And Anga means a limb, like my arms and legs are called Angas. So the Vedas themselves are direct knowledge about God and the spiritual world. But Vedangas, like astrology, logic, Sanskrit, tantras, so many other things, spiritual laws, and all of that. These are to help us understand Vedas. They're like limbs, like the limbs of the body. You can still live without arms or without legs, but of course you can't live as well, right? So we can still understand God with only Vedas, but it's not very practical. We don't have any idea how to live based on that knowledge, because it's just like theoretical knowledge. But the Vedangas are practical things that we can learn to apply this knowledge. Music, dance, art, architecture, temple worship. All these things are considered Vedangas, or the application of the spiritual knowledge given in the Vedas. So Jyotish astrology is considered the principal Vedanga. It is the main Vedic application. It's the main way that we see God in action in the material world. And it's to give us that vision, to see everything as God's energy and to see everything in relation to God. So how do we do this? Well, remember yesterday we were talking about ontology and how when you have a material ontology, you cannot perceive spiritual things directly. Remember the example? The black cat in the black room? Right? If we're in a black room at midnight and the light's out and a black cat walks through, are we going to see it? No. Impossible, right? Impossible. But if we're in a room like this, you know, all white, and the lights are on, and the sun's shining, and a black cat walks through the room, then are we going to see it? Of course. How can we miss it? Because the background and the foreground have enough contrast that we can distinguish them. We can become aware of them. So, consciousness is dependent upon background. And without the right background, we can't be conscious of something. So if we have only material knowledge, we can't be conscious of spiritual things directly because we don't have the proper background. That's why yesterday we talked so much about the spiritual world and all that, and we're going to talk more about that today. We really get into some details on it. And we're going to see how the material energy emanates from God, how He creates the material world. And then we'll understand better the relationship between the material energy and God. And then when we look at an astrology chart, we can see how all those things are connected and how our personal life is connected. So all of the things in the chart will actually remind us or show us or reveal to us different aspects of God. And this is God consciousness. This is spiritual consciousness. Everything we see should remind us of God. And how that works is when we have the proper background knowledge. Most people have very little knowledge of spiritual things. In fact, most people don't even know the difference between matter and spirit. We went over that yesterday, remember? Huh? What was it? What's the difference between matter and spirit?
Spirit is eternal.
Spirit's eternal. Matter is temporary. Simple. But if you go to the church, or you go down to the yoga center, or you go to the medicine man and you ask, well, what is the difference between matter and spirit? They go like, duh, I don't know. They can't explain it. Because they don't have Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is the only source on this planet that has complete knowledge of spiritual life. Complete means that if we have that knowledge, we can realize God. That's the symptom of having complete knowledge. It's just like if I have complete knowledge about a computer, I can build a computer. I can tear it apart, put it back together again, and it'll work better, and it'll be more, it'll be faster, and stuff like that. So if I have complete knowledge about spiritual life, then I can realize spiritual life. I can perceive, I can become conscious of spiritual things directly. And that's our experience in Vedic knowledge and Vedic spiritual life, because we have that complete knowledge. Just like last night, we were chanting over at Uwe's house, and it was so beautiful. It's like from the first notes, immediately, there was like perception of God. How do we perceive God? This is going to surprise you. Through the tongue. We perceive God through the tongue. People always say, well, can you show me God? Can I see God? And I say, no. You can't see God. You cannot see God. You are not qualified to see God. Can I show you God? Yes. But will you see Him? Probably not. Why? Because you're trying to approach God with the eyes, and that's the wrong way to approach God. You have to approach God with your tongue. This is a great secret. People don't understand this. That if you approach God with the tongue, then you can see God. And the next thing is the ears. You can hear God. There's a certain quality of sound vibration that if we're pure, we can recognize that God is present in that sound vibration. It's all dependent on our purity. So how do we become pure? By controlling the tongue. By controlling our speech, and by controlling the things that we eat. And by developing a taste for purity, a taste for truth, a taste for transcendental sound vibration. So when we hear transcendental sound vibration, when we hear something that's pure, we can recognize it. We can hear it. If we ourselves use our tongue to vibrate transcendental sound, and if we ourselves only take prasadam that's made from pure, offered from pure foods, then we learn the taste of purity. Then we know when we're speaking the truth, we know when we're speaking transcendental sound vibration, or singing or chanting, and then we know when other people are speaking.